Thank you all for being here today, and welcome to the Heritage Foundation. A special thanks to Catherine Lopez and the National Review Institute for co-hosting this event this afternoon. Just a slight reminder to please silence your cell phones during the program. This is being recorded and live streamed. We're also using a hashtag Culture of Life if you'd like to join in the discussion, live tweeting or live Facebook posting this event as well. Again, hashtag Culture of Life. So over the past few months, Americans have been shocked to learn that Planned Parenthood Federation of America's affiliates have been involved in harvesting and selling the body parts from recently aborted unborn children. We've been shown in startling clarity Planned Parenthood executives haggling over the price of organs from aborted children and casually discussing over wine and salad the best ways to perform abortions to better preserve tiny hearts, lungs, and livers for sale. In the most recent video released this week, a Planned Parenthood abortionist is joking that harvesting a fully intact head is something that she can strive for. That disregard for the dignity of every person allegedly extended to even some of the women Planned Parenthood claims to have helped. According to a former employee of a federal tissue procurement company, some Planned Parenthood clinics allegedly failed to even obtain informed consent from mothers before harvesting their aborted children's body parts. Whether Planned Parenthood violated federal or state law is a question for Congress, for states, and for the Department of Justice to decide. But the revelations over the past few months have left us with very serious policy questions. Is this an organization that deserves over $500 million a year in taxpayer funding? Is an organization constantly embroiled in controversy the best we can do for women's health? Or are there better ways to provide care that women, men, and children need? We'll have the chance today to discuss some of those other options, what they look like, and how we can better support alternatives to Planned Parenthood that meet women's health needs. We're delighted to be joined today by a few women who are literally on the front lines of providing better choices for women and empowering those facing unplanned pregnancies with life-affirming options. To start our discussion today, we're delighted to have with us Molly Hemingway, the senior editor at The Federalist. A longtime journalist, her work has appeared in the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, the Los Angeles Times, the Washington Post, CNN, National Review, Ricochet, and many other publications. Molly was also a 2004 recipient of a Phillips Foundation Journalism Fellowship. Please join me in welcoming Molly Hemingway.
Thank you, Sarah. It's great to be here, and it's been so interesting these last few months ever since the first Planned Parenthood video dropped on July 14th, I believe it was. I wanted to actually just make sure we were all on the same page in terms of knowing what those videos showed us and where we are in the media environment and where people are, how people are responding to it. So the first video was July 14th, and it hit with an explosion. People were, it showed a conversation with a Planned Parenthood executive talking about harvesting organs, and a lot of people had just never thought about this aspect of what goes on in abortion clinics, and it went viral immediately. Millions of people were watching the videos. But from the very beginning, the media have largely struggled to cover this, much less cover it well. And so it's all the more important that we understand what these videos have shown. And there are so many videos, but we're going to talk about the 11 videos that are taken from all of the footage, all of the undercover footage that we know is out there. Okay, so the first one, 9-minute video, 3 million views on YouTube and counting, features Dr. Deborah Nakatola, Planned Parenthood's Senior Director for Medical Services, munching on a salad and sipping wine while she admits to altering abortion procedures in such a way that the baby body parts can later be sold to human organ buyers. We've been very good at getting heart, lung, liver, because we know that, so I'm not going to crush that part, Nakatola tells the actors who are posing as baby part buyers. I'm going to basically crush below, I'm going to crush above, and I'm going to see if I can get it all intact. This video also came at the same time that we saw a flyer from one of the companies that purchases aborted baby parts, STEM Express, which promised clinics financial profits, financial benefits, and fiscal rewards. And there was a Planned Parenthood official on this flyer talking about how much she enjoyed her relationship with STEM Express. The second video features Dr. Mary Gatter, who at the time the video was filmed was serving as the president of the Planned Parenthood Medical Directors Council. In this video, she haggles over the payment for human body parts from aborted fetuses. While negotiating a price, she explicitly says she doesn't want to be the first person to name a price because the person who throws out the figure first is at a loss. So when the undercover journalists say, "What would you expect for intact tissue?" she says, "Well, why don't you start by telling me what you're used to paying?" At the end of the video, she jokes that she'd like to get a Lamborghini out of the deal. Now, this is an important video because Planned Parenthood has claimed that they only recoup costs, nothing more, for these baby parts. There's no reason you would haggle for even one moment if that were true, because you would just explain what the cost was and people would either take it or not. Okay, third video features Holly O'Donnell, a former STEM Express technician who harvested the parts from the aborted babies at Planned Parenthood clinics. And this is the first video that really explores how the organs are procured. She says, "We are asked to procure certain tissues like brain, livers, thymus, pancreas, heart, lungs, and pretty much anything on the fetus. It's basically a huge trafficking of fetal tissues," she explained. STEM Express is a company that hires procurement techs to draw blood and dissect dead fetuses and sell the parts to researchers. This video also features Dr. Savita Ginda, Vice President and Medical Director of Planned Parenthood of the Rocky Mountains, talking about how to get the most money out of an aborted 11-week-old. The fourth Planned Parenthood video features Dr. Ginda again, discussing the practice of procuring baby parts as well as how to avoid media scrutiny of organ harvesting. And this is another important theme that's throughout these videos. And toward the end of the video, the cameras get inside the abortion clinic's pathological laboratory. Medical assistants are heard and seen cracking skulls and extracting brains. "Here's some organs for you," a Planned Parenthood employee says. "Here's a stomach, kidney, heart," a medical assistant exclaims, "and another boy." The fifth video features Planned Parenthood Gulf Coast Research Director Melissa Farrell trying to negotiate a business agreement with investigators posing as organ buyers. She also tells them that some abortionists harvest body parts for their own research. They discuss how they could defend increased payments for more valuable organs, even though the law only permits payment for costs. "It's all just a matter of line items," she says. This video also features employees of a Gulf Coast clinic pulling a 20-week-old twin baby out of the freezer and graphically sifting through second trimester body parts. An employee holds up a liver and lungs as the technician gushes over how intact the organs are. A large severed limb is also pulled out of the dish where the other mangled remains lay. In this section of the video, we hear about Planned Parenthood federations, the National Planned Parenthood, encouragement of fetal organ harvesting. The sixth video once again features STEM Express procurement technician Holly O'Donnell. O'Donnell worked in Planned Parenthood clinics in California again. In this video, she explains how the procurement works and the cooperation between Planned Parenthood and STEM Express. Planned Parenthood provides the organ buyers with a list of what operations are being performed, sort of like, here's what you might be able to get out of our procedures for the day. Women are supposed to give consent for donating the body parts of their children, but O'Donnell says their organs were regularly harvested without the informed consent of the mothers. "There were times they would just take what they wanted," said O'Donnell, "and these mothers don't know, and there's no way they would know." O'Donnell also talks about one doctor who seemed to enjoy aborting children and who rushed through procedures. We also learn a little bit about how baby parts are shipped. Seventh video is the video that the media frequently claimed didn't even exist. It is a very horrifying video, as are some of the ones I mentioned previously. It combines clips from some of the previous videos that we just discussed, such as some of the statements of Planned Parenthood officials with the claims of other people involved in the baby organ procurement business. The centerpiece is the first-person testimony of O'Donnell explaining how a late-term baby boy was aborted, how she didn't know if he was technically alive or not since his heart was beating. She says she harvested his brain by cutting his head open, beginning at the chin. She describes how afterwards she had difficulty shoving him into a container because he was so big. She says it was the hardest experience she ever had. O'Donnell describes harvesting the boy's body parts with her colleague. Its nose was very pronounced, it had eyelids, and its mouth was pronounced. And then, since the fetus was still intact, she said, "Okay, well, this is a really good fetus, and it looks like we can procure a lot from it. We're going to procure brains." While she's talking about this, footage of another aborted later-term baby kicking his legs in a dish is shown, and later we see a picture of yet another boy who was born premature and died in his parents' arms. Okay, the next video features Planned Parenthood organ buyer STEM Express's CEO Kate Dyer talking about consistent growth in the industry, the organ harvesting industry of aborted children. She says Planned Parenthood has volume because they're a volume institution. Asked what would make her happy, she says another 50 livers a week. She says they work with almost triple-digit numbers of clinics, and they discuss intact cases. Dyer also discusses the lack of sanitary conditions at some clinics, which makes it difficult to get human organs that are not contaminated. I've seen really rampant problems with bacteria in certain clinics, Dyer said. I've seen staff come out of clinics. I've seen all sorts of things come out of clinics. The 9th Planned Parenthood video features Perrin Larton, the procurement director for Advanced Bioscience Resources, a California-based nonprofit organ middleman. She tells undercover journalists that pro-lifers are making business difficult for baby organ traffickers. Larton notes that while there have been federal limits on embryonic stem cell lines, taxpayer-funded research on aborted baby parts has gone on for decades. Fetal got lost in the mix, she said. She said that they even sent fetal tissue to the National Institutes of Health, even though the tissue was gleaned from abortion. The video also features graphic discussions of how abortionists shred body parts and tear the baby apart in the womb. The 10th video, featuring discussions with a wide range of Planned Parenthood executives, isn't graphic, but in some ways it's the most troublesome for Planned Parenthood. That's because the video shows that Planned Parenthood encourages the fetal organ trade at the very highest levels. They discuss how exchanging money for tissue is valid. Deb Vanderhyde, the national director of the Consortium of Planned Parenthood Abortion Providers, claims that some colleagues generate a great deal of income on the sale of human organs from aborted babies. Dr. Carolyn Westoff, senior medical advisor for Planned Parenthood Federation of America, doesn't shy away from specific discussions of the human organ trade, specifying which human organs buyers are interested in, such as eyes, brains, and gonads. Certainly everything we provide, she says. Dr. Vanessa Collins, VP for External Medical Affairs for Planned Parenthood, shares her worry that exposure of Planned Parenthood's participation in human organ harvesting could destroy it. Vanderhyde talks about how the entire industry is trying to figure out how to handle payment, as it would be a public relations disaster if it came out what Planned Parenthood was selling. Both Vanderhyde and Nakatola talk about how the lack of formal guidelines is intentional. They talk about avoiding a paper trail by not discussing things over email. Executives worry about congressional oversight and how that would affect their business. To sum up, Planned Parenthood engages in human organ harvesting. They clearly sell human organs. The discussion goes well beyond cost recuperation. They're terrified of media scrutiny of their human organ harvesting trade, and they're terrified of congressional interest in human organ harvesting from aborted children. I should mention an 11th video came out featuring Anna Dermish, and she talks about delivering children by breech so as to procure more organs. In general, all of these videos show that Planned Parenthood is engaging in all of this. And David Daleiden said that was his goal. David Daleiden is the undercover journalist who led the project. He said his goal was to show that Planned Parenthood is engaged in this. He demonstrated that ably. And another big point that he wanted to make is that these children's organs are valuable precisely because they're human, but we deny the humanity of these children when it comes to laws governing abortion. This is a disconnect that civilized society should not permit to take place. I've done a lot on the media coverage of this, which has been an abomination, and I think that's pretty obvious. I was just reading that, each time a new video comes out, the media simply don't mention it. I think the last time the networks mentioned a new video coming out was July 31st. It's just a scandal how poorly the media have interrogated this. And as we talk about, what's going on in light of these videos, it's clear that these have reinvigorated an already pretty invigorated pro-life movement that has done nothing but grow over the last 4 decades. And people are taking to praying outside of clinics, to volunteering and donating money to crisis pregnancy centers, to seeking action at the state and federal level, whether it's investigations into Planned Parenthood, defunding of some of the just huge amounts of taxpayer funding that goes to Planned Parenthood, or just talking with friends. There's a whole litany of things that people are doing in response to these videos. As we go forward, I do think it's important that we understand how the failure of the media to cover this well is hurting our ability to move forward. I think it was July 20th, I wrote a piece called, here are some free ideas for the media to cover this story. And I just want to go through just a small, tiny fraction of some of the things that we don't know, that it would be helpful to know if we had a competent, capable media that could dig into some of this, and how we will need to find out answers to this as we move forward. Okay, so here's some questions I had. What's the standard procedure for disposal of the unborn children killed in abortion? Are there abortion clinic standards for this? Does it vary by state? How much money does Planned Parenthood receive via sales of baby organs? Do they keep records? Are those records trustworthy? How do we know? How far along in a pregnancy must a woman be for her child's organs to be considered worthwhile for procurement, sale, and transfer? What are the laws on trafficking in human body parts? Who wrote those laws? Was the abortion industry involved in writing those laws? How did sales of aborted children begin? Who arranges the sales? How much money changes hands? Do the buyers receive any federal funds? What research is conducted? What do corporations do with the aborted baby parts? What about these consent forms? We don't know a lot about how consent is granted and whether women are given full information they need to consent to these donations of their babies' bodies. Is that form that we saw standard across all Planned Parenthood affiliates? What about other abortion clinics? Is Planned Parenthood able to disclose which of its affiliates are engaged in the harvesting of baby organs for sale to corporations? If not, why not? If so, how reliable are their records? This is particularly important because frequently the media just take Planned Parenthood's words with whatever they say. Planned Parenthood came out recently and said, okay, that thing that we said wasn't happening. We're going to stop doing that now. And everyone said, oh, so Planned Parenthood's stopping it. Well, how do we know? Planned Parenthood also claimed for years that they were doing mammograms. It took Cecile Richards being put under oath in front of Congress to finally admit what all of us knew all along, which is that they don't do a single mammogram and that the media had been repeating this false claim for years. So, again, how do we know they're not doing it? How do we know? And why would we consider them trustworthy on this? Okay, explain the various federal and state laws governing organ procurement and sales. And how is it monitored? I mean, again and again, every week we hear stories coming out of abortion clinics about infections, women being rushed to hospitals and whatnot. What is the monitoring of the fetal human organ harvesting trade? What do medical experts say about the changes to the abortion procedure mentioned by so many of these people caught on tape, where they openly admit that they're altering the abortion procedure, even if it's in terms of just delivering a child by breech, which might be a violation of law, or how they alter where they crush the baby's body in order to procure the organs? What rights do the mothers have to be informed about how their abortion process has been altered to procure these parts? Is there a price differential between baby parts based on sex or race? If so, how much? Did the buyers of organs, either as companies or as individuals from Planned Parenthood, donate back to Planned Parenthood or their affiliates? This is another thing I think is important for us to know, as Planned Parenthood claims they will no longer sell parts. Does that mean that corporations who get the baby parts from Planned Parenthood will just give a really nice gift at the end of the year? I mean, how do we know what's going on in terms of this very valuable trade? Why the difference in price for different parts if it doesn't correlate to their value and there are no changes to the abortion procedure and Planned Parenthood is merely being reimbursed for their costs? Why would you see different costs for different parts? What are the uses of the organs and tissues obtained, and where is the end market? Are the procurement procedures and markets in existence in other countries, and how do they compare? Is there a black market in the U.S. or elsewhere? What sort of benefits does Planned Parenthood receive that are not directly financial? What about the use of ultrasound technology in organ harvesting, which is a huge issue as people try to pass legislation dealing with ultrasounds prior to abortion? We heard all these doctors talk about how they use ultrasounds in order to procure the most valuable parts. And even just cargo and passenger airlines have specific policies regarding the packaging and transport of human remains. How does that apply to aborted baby parts? So as we think about how to handle this, either on a personal level, state level, federal level, some of this will interact with. We have a lot of information we need to know the answers to, and unfortunately, the media have done such a horrifically bad job that we're having to move forward without a lot of the information that you would normally expect to have at this point in a similar type scandal. So I just wanted to kind of make sure we were all on the same page about this. I'm very excited to move on to the next part.
Thank you so much, Molly. That was really helpful. I know I'm probably not alone in wishing that Molly was there in Congress asking some of these questions of Cecile Richards, a lot of which didn't get asked or answered. I wanted to now invite our panel up here. I'm Catherine Lopez from the National Review Institute, Sister Magdalene from the Sisters of Life, Sarah Torrey from the Heritage Foundation, and Dr. Gracie Christie. Here we go. One of the things I love about Molly is she did this. She and Kirsten Powers are really heroines in the story of Kermit Gosnell when no one was covering that trial in Philadelphia, and really calling the media out. And then all of a sudden CNN was reporting on it, and people really saw that it was a story they had a moral responsibility to cover. There's still a lot lacking, but we saw progress, and you're working on it. You're working on it this time around. But what I love about Molly is obviously these are horrific details that we have to talk about, and she doesn't do it with any glee. She's doing it because we have to be honest, and also because this, as much as I hate to say this way, but there's also an opportunity here. Planned Parenthood has become so entrenched in our politics and in our culture, but there are so many different alternatives that we can support that take a different approach to human life and women's dignity and family. And so today, that's a little bit what we want to focus on. And we'll start with Sarah Torrey to talk a little bit about the politics of this, some of the alternatives Congress can look at, and Washington could look at.
Thanks, Catherine. So I think one of the major alternatives to Planned Parenthood is one that's been talked about a lot over the past few months, and that's these community health centers, these network of community health centers that are available across the country. Federally qualified health centers there are 1,200 federally qualified health centers that operate over 9,000 service sites, in particularly medically underserved rural and urban areas throughout the country. They provide the same types of women's health care that Planned Parenthood does, cancer screenings, birth control, et cetera, but also a wide range of primary care, not only for women, but also for men and children. Alliance Defending Freedom and Charlotte Lozier Institute have put together what I hope have become ubiquitous maps of both the federally qualified health centers and similarly rural health centers compared to the 665 Planned Parenthood affiliates across the country. There are clearly more options through these community health centers than there are even through Planned Parenthood. Again, these federally qualified health centers provide everything from immunizations, diabetes screenings, cardiovascular screenings, emergency care in some places, and many have even expanded to include dental and mental health care, as well as primary health care for children, as well as women and men. In 2013 alone, federally qualified health center sites served over 21 million people. That's 8 times the number of the 2.7 million that Planned Parenthood reports serving in the last reporting year alone. And those are in addition to the many other healthcare centers that aren't in that network of community health centers, charity centers, health centers, other private providers, private doctors that provide Medicaid, all in the service of low-income women, men, and children. And that's also in addition to, for the women who are particularly experiencing the difficulties of an unplanned pregnancy, there are over 2,000 pregnancy centers across the country that can provide medical testing, prenatal services, material support to women in those situations, all of which can provide women life-affirming options as opposed to what they'll get in Planned Parenthood. And I'd like to take a step back just for a moment and drill down on some other details that we know about Planned Parenthood, even outside of the videos that we've seen over the past few months, and the details that Molly so eloquently laid out for us at the beginning here. And there's 3 major points, I think, for why Congress and why states and other governments can redirect money away from Planned Parenthood to these other centers, whether it's community health centers or other charity health centers, other clinics providing comprehensive care for women, men, and children. Number 1, Planned Parenthood has been accused of very serious allegations, even outside of the fetal body trafficking that we've seen over the past few months. It's not just harvesting and selling tiny livers, hearts, and lungs of aborted children that they've been accused of. They've also faced accusations of financial waste, abuse, even potential fraud with Medicaid dollars, taxpayer money in many states. A few years ago, a Planned Parenthood affiliate in Texas had to pay back or agreed to pay over $4 million to settle a lawsuit alleging Medicaid fraud in that state. Others have been accused of failing to report the sexual abuse of minor girls, Most recently in Alabama, a young girl was brought into a Planned Parenthood clinic for an abortion twice and handed back to her abuser both times. And still others have faced accusations of not holding to health and safety standards for women in many of their clinics. Number two, even though Planned Parenthood will tell you, in the midst of all of these scandals and controversies, that they provide so many other medical services for women, they must stay in business. They must remain receiving over $500 million in taxpayer funding every year because they provide medical services like sexually transmitted infection testing and cancer screenings and contraception. And yet, over the past 10 years, just looking at their annual reports alone, cancer screening and preventative services at Planned Parenthood have decreased by more than 50% since 2004. And the number of individuals served by Planned Parenthood has decreased by almost 10% over the same time period. All the while, Planned Parenthood has become a billion-dollar organization, largely on the backs of taxpayers. During its last reporting year alone, Planned Parenthood received over $528 million in state, federal, and local government taxpayer funding. And during the same year, it reported revenues over expenses, money they had after they paid all of their salaries and expenses, of more than $127 million, and net assets of over $1.4 billion. It's one of the wealthiest nonprofit organizations in the country and has a large donor base with very deep pockets. I would suggest that it can stand a little bit of belt tightening. The government funding that it receives is about 40% of its revenue. 60% comes outside of the government and could be used to provide the services that it claims to provide to women. Now, I haven't actually mentioned anything about abortion. I think that those 3 points, the fact that they have been accused of very serious other allegations, even outside of the current controversy, they've decreased actual care for women over the past 10 years, and they've become a billion-dollar organization with a large slush fund, basically, of money at their disposal. I think that's enough of an argument to suggest that if we have a network of community health centers, a network of other providers that can provide comprehensive care for women without entanglement in abortion and these controversies, I think we should redirect that money to those centers. But let's add in the fact that Planned Parenthood has become the largest abortion provider in the nation. In their last reporting year alone, they performed over 327,000 abortions. About 10 years ago, they were only doing about 250,000. I say only, that's a large number. All the while, the national abortion rate has declined. So today, they're performing almost 1/3 of the abortions in the United States. Even while they perform over 327,000 abortions in their last year alone, they made only under 2,000 adoption referrals and provided less than 20,000 prenatal services. If a woman comes into Planned Parenthood pregnant, she is much more likely to get an abortion than she is an adoption referral or care to parent and give birth to that child. The videos have shown to us the logic of where abortion on demand inevitably leads. It leads to where tiny livers and lungs and hearts are useful for harvesting, but the nameless baby that they come from is of no value at all. They're too small, too dependent, too disabled, too convenient to have any value or be allowed to continue living. If the value of life within Planned Parenthood's walls is measured by utility and convenience, rather than the inherent dignity of every human being, is this where we want our taxpayer dollars going? Is this where we think this is the best place for women to get health care? Or can we put those limited taxpayer dollars to more efficient and effective use by redirecting those to centers and clinics that can provide more comprehensive care and provide more life-affirming options for women? And we'll have the opportunity to discuss some of those other options with our other 2 panelists.
I don't want to spend a lot of time with introductions, so I want to go right to Dr. Gracie Christie, who's flown in from Miami. She's a radiologist there. What does this all look like, the non-Washington medical perspective? What does this all look like to you, and how can we better meet the needs of women?
You know, from a medical perspective, it's been really wonderful watching the curtain be pulled back on on what we know as doctors, as nurses, anyone who's really involved in women's medicine and women's healthcare, we know that Planned Parenthood has nothing to do with healthcare. What Planned Parenthood does is it promotes a new definition of healthcare, and they've done this very successfully. They have narrowed the idea of healthcare to mean something very small, which is the promoting or the enabling of one kind of what they consider the ideal life of the ideal woman, which is a life of sexual liberation where there are no consequences for pregnancy. So they're in the business of promoting this idea so that then they can come back and reap the financial benefits of what that means, which is a lot of children being conceived without a home, without anyone to welcome them, and they have to be removed. They have to be taken out of society. So Planned Parenthood is highly successful at what it does, but it doesn't do women's health care. I called my local Planned Parenthood office a couple weeks ago, just down the street from me, and I asked what they did. What can I come in and do? I actually pretended I had a friend who was pregnant, and she said, we can give your friend an abortion if she's under 13 weeks. If she's more than 13 weeks, we'll send you out to somewhere else, and don't worry about payment. There's always plenty of money. If your friend is poor, we're very well funded, so this is not a money issue. And I said, well, what else do you do? Like, can I come in and have a mammogram? No, but we can give you a breast exam, a manual breast exam, and we can do a pap smear. And we also have testing for STDs, period. So that's the entire menu of women's health care at a Planned Parenthood facility. And this is just a small facility. It doesn't do the big cases that where you would end up with fetal tissue because these are younger babies. But it's really amazing how they've been able to redefine the whole idea of medicine. And from a medical perspective, it's super scary because it's not just abortion. I mean, abortion's a huge deal, but it's the whole entire dignity of life. What is a human life? What's a good life, and how do we live it? Planned Parenthood has a very small notion of that, and I think we need to take back. I would love, as a doctor, to see us take back healthcare. Healthcare is the prevention of disease, the prolongation of life, and the treatment of disease. Contraception and abortion don't prevent diseases, because pregnancy is not a disease. It's a beautiful, it's the best thing that can happen to a woman, or one of the best things. And we have to take that back. So on the community health centers idea that you were talking about, I work with all the women that I work with are low income, and many of them come from these community centers, and that's where real medicine is being practiced. Women can go there, and it doesn't matter if they have the money or they don't have the money. They will get the pap smear, and they will get the manual breast exam, but they'll also get a mammogram. If there's a lump, they'll get a biopsy. They'll just get what they need. They need the ability they need the chance to live a good life. And one of the things that promote a good life is good health. We all know that. We all wish that for ourselves and for everyone else. So as a doctor, I'd love for us to take that back and take healthcare back from Planned Parenthood.
Sister Magdalene, for the last 12 years, has run the visitation mission that the Sisters of Life have in New York City, really literally on the front lines, as Sarah put it, helping women in New York in need. And the Sisters of Life, for those of you who don't know, were started by the late Cardinal O'Connor in New York, who said that if you are a woman in need who finds herself pregnant, the Catholic Church will help you. And he started the Sisters of Life primarily to meet that need. And so, Sister, can you tell us a little bit about the work that you do?
Sure. We were started 25 years ago by John Cardinal O'Connor. We currently have 94 sisters in our community. And like all sisters, we take vows of poverty, chastity, obedience, but we have a special fourth vow to protect and enhance the sacredness of all human life. And we are a contemplative, active community. All of our work flows from our prayer life. And we seek to build a culture of life and love. But in this work, we've been led in various ways in all of our apostolates. And the apostolate that I've been in for the last 12 years is called the Visitation Mission. We have been serving 1,000 women a year. Each of these women are vulnerable, pregnant women, and we have locations in both New York City and Toronto. In this mission, we offer practical, emotional, and spiritual supports to women throughout their time of pregnancy and to help them, to support them in their future, for their own future and their child's. We are able to do this through the generous support of so many coworkers of life. These are volunteers who all over the country are willing to lay down some part of their lives that others may live. Women coworkers will go to coffee, go for a walk, or just chat on the phone with all of these women. Men coworkers have built cribs, relocated women, or even befriended the father of the baby. It's very beautiful. Many lawyers, doctors, and employers and counselors will offer their services pro bono. And families have been willing even to welcome a pregnant woman into their own home. So we serve also as Sisters of Life in the Archdiocesan Family Life Office, helping to create a culture of life in the diocese. We have the great privilege of watching God's mercy unfold in the lives of women who come to us, who are seeking healing after the experience of an abortion through our Hope and Healing mission. We have a mission called the Holy Respite Mission, where we welcome women to live side by side with us, leaving the pressures of the world to come live with us, and give birth to their child. They can also stay there for the first year of their child's life. We have, the final work is we have a mission of evangelization through our retreat mission at our Villa Maria Retreat Center in Connecticut. And we also speak throughout the country and the world. But when we see women, and we see how deeply so many people will believe in her, when she sees how many people will believe in her, she begins to believe in herself. Many of the women who come to us are very vulnerable to the decision of abortion and find themselves in very difficult circumstances. We have found that given real support and a listening ear, they choose life for their child. And this is the deepest desire of a woman's heart, to be given a real choice. When she's given that real choice, she won't choose abortion. She knows in her heart of hearts that giving life to her child is the only choice she can really live with. So I'd like to tell you a story that actually happened. In our visitation convent, this is one of those classic busy days there. I opened the door to find 3 teenagers standing there. They said, "Hi, we just came from Planned Parenthood and we would like to hear more about your program." Though I was a little surprised because we don't typically receive referrals from Planned Parenthood, I welcomed them in for a cup of tea. Amy began to share her story with me. She's a senior. She was a senior in a Bronx high school. She woke up one morning after a party to discover she was pregnant. The father of the baby told her, "I don't want anything to do with this, just have an abortion." Everyone else around her said it was her choice. With her own father in jail, her mother as the sole provider for the family, and not having support from anyone, she felt her only choice was to have an abortion, and scheduled an appointment. As she got ready to go that morning, she said a little prayer. "God, if you don't want me to do this, you have to give me a sign." As she sat in the waiting room of Planned Parenthood, her heart was heavy and restless about what she was about to do, and she tried to distract herself, and she began to look at the brochures. She was drawn to pick up one brochure in particular, and it just happened to be the brochure for the visitation mission of the Sisters of Life. To this day, we really don't know how it got there. As she read it, she began to cry. She told us, and that in her heart she knew that this was the answer to her prayer that she prayed that morning. She stuffed the brochure in her purse, grabbed her 2 friends in the waiting room, and showed up at our door. I listened to Amy share her fears, the pressures she felt to have an abortion, and the humiliation of feeling like a statistic. After sharing, I simply asked her, "Amy, what is your heart telling you to do?" She said, "Keep the baby," she said, almost to her own surprise. Then she smiled. She looked at me and said, "I'm going to let go and let God. I'm having this baby." She did that and more. She had a beautiful baby girl. She graduated high school with honors, continued to complete a 4-year degree in psychology. She got married and said, reflecting on how her daughter influenced her, "I never knew I could be so strong." I always say, when you choose new life, it brings you new life. She herself received a whole new life. This is the reality we see every day. We often ask, if everything were different, if you had an apartment, a job, and people you could share this joy with, what would you do? The frightened pregnant woman always responds, "Then I would choose life for my baby." So that is our job, to make everything different. Every woman has great dreams. These dreams do not have to end when she becomes pregnant. Somewhere deep down, each woman we meet feels there must be another way. For her, the abortion isn't really about killing a child. What it is about for her is the idea that pregnancy shatters her identity, the sense of who she is. She feels that her life is over. The woman before us needs to know that she is someone who has strength, who is decent, trustworthy, and who can look out for other people. When she can have faith in herself, then she can begin to have faith in the ability to give life to her child. Experience has informed our work because we know firsthand how deeply abortion fails a woman at every level. There is such a broad spectrum of negative effects that burden her ability to flourish. It is so true that women deserve better than abortion. One story that I'll never forget is a woman named Mary. I was blessed to know her. She came to us through our Hope and Healing mission. Her abortion happened 15 years before she met us. When she found out she was pregnant, her husband told her to get an abortion or he would divorce her. He did not want to endure the effects of postpartum depression that Mary usually had following a pregnancy. She finally gave in and had the abortion. The pain, the guilt, the sorrow, and shame burdened her heart deeply. She sought counseling, but her counselor wouldn't validate the abortion as the possible route for her struggles. She started abusing substances. Eventually, she lost hope of finding healing and decided to take her own life. She didn't want to burden her family, so she decided to organize all her things. As she was going through one of the last boxes in her office, at the bottom of that box, she found a church bulletin that talked about the Sisters of Life and our Hope and Healing mission. She took a leap of faith and called. She came on a day of prayer and healing, received the grace to know the Father's love, and she literally felt her heart start to beat again and got her life back. Then she spent the rest of her life helping in the mission and bearing witness to the power of God's mercy to other women who came for support. Women suffer for years, silently, alone, unable to find healing. The sorrow of their abortion burdens them throughout their entire life, reporting sleepless nights, years of escape to risky behaviors. We have come to see in them the great betrayal of abortion and the reality that no matter the circumstances, it is always better to give life to one's child. We've learned that the woman who has lost her child to abortion always knows how old her little one would be today, the day that would have been the child's birthday. The deep regret and mourning of a woman who longs to turn back time, wishing they could have made a different decision, if only they had known. The lie of abortion is that everything will go back to the way it was before you were pregnant, while in the heart of every woman is a resounding truth that maternity is forever. These are among the reasons why the Sisters of Life at the Visitation Mission are so desperate to reach every pregnant woman with a real lifeline. We want her to hold on to this line of hope long enough for us to introduce her to all the resources available to her. Every day we see how powerful it is to listen to the desires of a woman's heart, to reverence her great beauty and dignity, to stand with her and uphold her in the hope and the gift of new life, all in a way that is true to her and to her child. We serve women of every age, every background, every socioeconomic class, marital status, prenatal diagnosis, and religion. Pregnancy comes somewhat as a crisis, especially if it's unexpected, outside of the desired circumstances, or challenging to plans that have already been laid. Yet the deepest desire of her heart is to give life. As little girls, we don't dream of broken hearts and abortion. To help women truly flourish, we need to stand with them. We as Sisters of Life now know that there is a tremendous sleeping giant of men and women all over the world waking up. There is so many who are silently being summoned at a grassroots level to defend life, one heart at a time. So many people want to put their gifts, talents, time, resources towards building a culture of life, a place where women don't have to face pressure and fear when they become pregnant outside of the desired circumstances. Many come to us wanting to put their faith into action, and we are finding more and more are coming to us because they have been personally affected by the pain and sorrow that comes from suffering an abortion. Whether they have been personally affected or have seen a friend or family member betrayed by abortion, they want to be there and to do what they can so that someone else doesn't have to go through it. It ennobles so many men, women, grandmothers. Everyone has a gift to put at the service of life. A story that really illustrates this gift, put at the service of life, occurred just the other day. We were working with a very vulnerable pregnant woman named Sarah. She was extremely tempted to have an abortion, even making an appointment for that Thursday. At the same time, she spoke of starting over out west. She had family there and great potential to reshape her life. We were able to call several coworkers in her new location. Within a week, she had an apartment to go to, groceries ready to be dropped off, and several interviews waiting for her. So the Thursday appointment was now approaching, and she was waffling back and forth. I sent an email to a portion of our list of coworkers asking about frequent flyer miles. That was the last piece necessary for her trip out west. Within 15 minutes, a reply came. John wrote us with the flight number, the times, and all the arrangements. He just needed the names and the birthdays. I called John to thank him for such an immediate, generous response and to settle all the details, when I learned so much more. John and his wife were also pregnant. That same day, however, they learned that their baby had passed in the womb and there was no longer a heartbeat. On the Thursday Sarah had planned her abortion, this couple would be giving birth to a stillborn baby and preparing him for burial. This couple was convinced that their baby was laying down his own life that another may live. So as we heard the story unfold, we were all in tears. When we told Sarah, she too cried and said, "They really want to help me?" Sarah has chosen life. She and her children have been embraced by love, one that has the power to change lives. We have over 10,000 coworkers all over the country. This mission is ready to explode. So many are desperate to be put to work. It is a huge lie that the woman is all alone. Abortion does not need to happen. After 55 million abortions in the United States since Roe v. Wade, we know that we do not want this to happen even one more time. I just want to end with a very short glimpse into another story of creating a culture of life. These are the actual words of a woman named Raquel. She lived with us during her pregnancy, and before her child was born, she said she would never choose abortion for herself, but she would also never tell anyone else not to. But she tells this story. These are her words. She says, "I was in a hospital elevator on my way to a doctor's appointment. Another woman got on with me. I said hello, and she burst out crying and told me that she was pregnant. I said, 'Congratulations, I'm pregnant too.' She explained that she just couldn't do it right now. It wasn't the right time. Then I felt Liam, that's the baby in her womb, move, and I placed her hand on my belly. Do you feel that? Right at that moment, my baby kicked her. She said, 'Wow.' I said, 'Yeah, my baby's going to be a linebacker. He's going to be strong, and he's going to be blessed.' And she said, 'Why is he going to be blessed?' I said, 'Because he's here. Whether you laugh or you cry, if you're here, you're blessed.' you're put here for a reason. And she said, I'm going to get an abortion. And I said, no, you're not. You're not going to have an abortion. You're going to have a girl. I know that already because I wanted to have a girl, but I'm having a boy. But that's okay. You have your girl, dress her up in pink, put ponytails in her hair, and call her Raquel. And by the way, my middle name is Jasmine. And if she asks you how she got her name, tell her you met a fabulous lady who was pregnant on an elevator one day, and she told you you were going to have a beautiful little girl. She laughed, and then we got off the elevator together, and I walked her down to make an appointment with my obstetrician. You see, I can be pushy. I didn't see her again until 2 years later at the same hospital. She was pushing a stroller and ran up to me and hugged me. She had twins, 2 girls, and their names are Raquel and Jasmine. And she had them all dressed up in pink, just like I told her. She made it. She said, I love you. You don't understand, Raquel. I love you, I love you, I love you. I'll never forget your name, your face, your smile. I would do anything for you. I love you. And I said, I love you too. I understand. I have experienced it. So this story just shows the great power of one choice for love and life to have a rippling effect. And soon over time, a culture of life can emerge from that. She shows how people who choose life, to use Raquel's words, are going to be blessed. Whether they cry or laugh, if we're here, we're blessed. And others will be blessed. We're put here for a reason.
When Sarah and I were discussing this panel, the conversation went something like, Sister Magdalene's in New York, but she has to come to Washington. I know, you know why. Thank you very much. When the National Review Institute and the Heritage Foundation started doing panels, a series of panels on different issues, maybe a year and a half or so ago, it's exactly the kind of testimony that you just brought forth that we really wanted to focus on. Because if it's my contention, if people just knew the Sisters of Life, if they knew all the people on the front lines, and we can name so many other examples. Sarah and I were talking about the Gianna Center, which is a national operation. There's the FEM operation that Sister Magdalene and I were talking on the phone. There are all these community health centers that Gracie and Sarah were talking about. If people just knew they existed, and that it is a lie that women are alone, and it's a lie that they can't have a holistic, life-affirming approach to healthcare, then we could get somewhere, and these pro-life, pro-choice wars wouldn't have to exist the way they do intractably. Gracie, could you just talk a little bit more about what you were saying about women's healthcare really happening on the ground in those community health centers? What would you want Washington to know about that?
I think that healthcare is a very big term, and that it takes into account the entire woman, and not just these tiny reproductive parts of her. And that's because a woman is a human being, and human beings all have the same. We all have the same aspirations, whether we're men or women, and Washington ought to take all that into account and stop listening to, stop reducing us, stop reducing women to this weird tiny denominator of just reproductive no's, basically, because it's never a reproductive yes, it's always a reproductive no, and that the money that is being thrown away, making people in Planned Parenthood rich, and building up their bottom line, would be better spent on places like these community health centers that take the entire human woman into account. And in every abortion, there's a man involved. There's grandparents, and there's brothers and sisters and cousins. And these community health centers take all those other people into account. So it's not just a one-size-fits-all solution like Planned Parenthood, where it actually doesn't fit anybody. Because, as the sister was saying, women don't recover from abortions. They think they do for a little while. I know that people write in the newspaper, I've seen this, women celebrating their abortions, but that doesn't happen. I mean, I don't know who those women are, but the women that I work with, an abortion is a tragedy. An abortion is when I put down that ultrasound probe on a belly and there's a baby under there, the woman is seeing it on the screen. There's a little head and there's hands. The baby is moving, even if it's only this, when we see it at first, it's only this big, right? A couple centimeters. But on the screen, it's big, it's giant, and it's very much human, it's very much alive. The woman who sees that, that's her baby. And she knows it. And when you see the next look in her eyes, the panic, the despair, that moment of, you wanna hug them and say, it's gonna be okay, we're gonna get through this. You can't do that all the time, but they'll think you're crazy. But yeah, those are despairs. Like every abortion is a moment of deep despair and loneliness, and just complete abandonment. And that's not healthcare. That's not healthcare. So I love the federal government to realize that and think about women as human beings and not, cash cows, which is the way Planned Parenthood thinks of them.
Sarah, do you have hope on Capitol Hill that we can get beyond Planned Parenthood?
I think that there's a good argument to be made regardless of what side of the aisle, what side of the abortion issue that you're on. I think a lot of people have been rightly shocked that Planned Parenthood is allegedly harvesting and selling the body parts of aborted children. That shocks people who even would support legal abortion. I think the fact that they have declined even their women's health services, the limited health services they do provide, all the while amassing this billion-dollar industry, this billion-dollar organization. Those facts alone we're not saying that Planned Parenthood can't exist on the other 60% of the funding that they receive from private and medical costs. Not saying that a woman couldn't still go there if she wanted to get unsubsidized care. What we're saying is we have limited taxpayer dollars to put towards women's health. We should be putting those to more efficient and effective use. Simply disqualifying Planned Parenthood from Medicaid or from Title X or the other funding streams that they get doesn't change the overall amount that those funding streams have to be put to women's health. It just means that they'll go to these more comprehensive health centers. We'll be tacitly endorsing other health centers that are more comprehensive in their view of women, as Gracie was saying. So I think if that argument is made, yeah, I would certainly hope that gains traction both at the federal level and the state level.
I wanted to open us up to some questions before we wrap up. In the back here.
Thank you very much, and thank you for everyone on the panel, and also to Molly. My name is Diane Conacchioli. Many of you may be aware of the present challenge we face right here in D.C. Probably within walking distance of here is a Planned Parenthood facility under renovation. And Sarah, to your point, Planned Parenthood actually purchased the building 2 years ago for over $6 million. In addition to the work of 40 Days for Life, that is our prayer and our candlelight vigils, on a personal level, I'm also pursuing two different avenues. And one is the very blatant contradiction that there was never a public hearing. And not only that, there are certain zoning contradictions. So I'm pursuing that. On another level, I and a few other people have made personal appeals to the general contractor. And I'm in the process of now sending a second proposal, Doctor, along your lines of a community health center, because I'm trying to appeal to him and his spouse to actually turn the whole situation around by actually purchasing the building from Planned Parenthood. So I guess this was just a point of information that we do face a real challenge within walking distance of here. Planned Parenthood is alive and well in D.C. They moved from 16th Street to this location right between a school and a home, and that again, we're on the front lines praying. We're going to have a candlelight vigil, the second of two. And that there is a real challenge, and that we must face it. And we're doing what we can through prayer, but also working working the system through the DC government. So thank you very much.
And to your point, I talked about a little bit, over the past 10 years, Planned Parenthood has increased the number of abortions that they're doing each year. They've done that in no small part because they start building these mega centers. And Americans United for Life has a fantastic report detailing the increase in these mega centers that they've been building. So this is, even as they're decreasing cancer screenings and preventative care, this is becoming more and more a focus of what they're doing.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because one thing that we have seen, and we haven't talked a lot about, Molly touched on it a little bit, is people, instead of feeling powerless in the face of these grotesque videos and allegations, and have gone out and tried to see what they could do. And there's a lot of prayer, and there's a lot of just supporting the groups that are providing alternatives in local communities, which is a beautiful thing to see. Ovid?
Good afternoon. I'm Ovid Lamontang from Americans United for Life.
Speaking of.
Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Christie, I wanted to know if you could speak to the issue of the demand for baby body parts, organs, tissue, and so forth. What's fueling that demand? Who's the end user? And is it necessary for scientific research, for vaccination production, to have the body parts of aborted infants? Or can science, can your profession writ large proceed to do what it needs to do for people without using fetal body parts?
Well, the fetal body parts are very valuable to research companies, to investors who've put in huge amounts of money into the next Parkinson's drug or the next huge, diabetes breakthrough. And yeah, they probably are valuable for these reasons. I mean, research, there's a lot of money on the front end and a lot of nothing on the end, on the back end, with some stellar things, and sometimes things take many decades to come through. But in research, you have this. You've always had the issue in research. Where do you stop? Do you do research on human beings without telling them? Like it's that you all know that's been done, even in the United States. Do you do research on animals and hurt them and keep them alive in cages? So there's all these moral, ethical lines, very bright lines. They used to be bright lines that exist when you embark on research. So Congress and the laws have tried to put these lines down for people to follow in ways that reflect the beauty of the United States, that it's based on real human values, human dignity, right? But places like Planned Parenthood, they know how to get around it. And in the end, it might be that some fabulous drug that will save lives will come from this fetal research. I'm not so sure I don't know that that's worth it. I mean, we're all gonna. Oh, this is say we're all gonna die, and not everything's worth the prolongation of life at that end. So not the ends are not necessarily worth the means. So research just falls into those weird categories.
I think adult stem cells. Do you think?
Well, the stem cell issue is a little different, but adult stem cells, people thought that the fetal stem cells were going to be, and you all know the huge fights about the stem cells and what that all means. The adult stem cells are the ones that have shown promise and have actually started to show results in the research laboratories. So maybe that's God working behind the scenes, making sure that people don't get too big for their britches.
Part of why I think what Molly does is so important is because she tries to keep people from looking away, because I know my instinct is to want to look away because it's so awful. But if we have to look at the details, I wonder, Sarah, do you have the sense that, like with late-term abortion, with partial birth abortion, once people had to stop looking away, which is a continual process, obviously, but we did reach sort of a milestone moment during those Clinton years and then beyond. Do you see something similar beginning to happen on this issue of harvesting babies' organs, right?
I think for those who can, and maybe that's one of the enduring value, if you will, of these videos, is if you can stomach some of the more graphic ones, you are forced to confront the reality of abortion, that, like we were saying before, they are hearts, lungs, and livers that are valuable because they are human hearts, lungs, and livers. You cannot separate that from the fact that you are taking the life of a human child who has been human since the moment of conception. And just like we have been confronted with the advent of ultrasound sonogram technology to see the unborn child in the womb, and had to wrestle with that, and that has been one of many reasons why more Americans are increasingly pro-life. I think these videos can also be that kind of lightning bolt to show the reality of abortion and to really confront the idea that this is just a mass of cells or a mass of tissue that should be not valued in any way.
Yes, right there. And then Gloria, I think you'll be our last question.
Josh Shepard with Bound for Life. Because there have been several votes in Congress to defund Planned Parenthood, I think many pro-life advocates, especially those outside D.C., think that taxpayers no longer fund Planned Parenthood. So I don't know if you could address the issue of taxpayer funding in the current context.
Mm-hmm. So there are two major ways that Planned Parenthood gets federal funding, which is a large portion of that $528 million that they get in government funding every year. That's primarily through Title X family planning grants and mostly through reimbursements through Medicaid. There have been a variety of different proposals trying to either chip away at some of that federal funding or redirect it entirely. None of those to date have passed, so all of that funding is still flowing to Planned Parenthood. What states, so there's the efforts at the federal level, there's also efforts at the state level. So a number of states, even before the recent controversy, have redirected state level family planning funding away from Planned Parenthood and to these more comprehensive health centers. That's still an option. A couple states are now in the process of trying to end Medicaid contracts with local Planned Parenthood affiliates, not only because of the things that are shown on these videos, but because of the other controversies, like I mentioned, particularly the alleged abuse, waste, potential fraud in Medicaid. That's of a big concern to the state of Texas, which is currently trying to end its contract with Planned Parenthood. So there are a lot of different ways to sort of tackle this issue, and hopefully, many of those will end up coming to fruition.
Gloria.
Okay, so Gloria Purvis. My question is, or should I say statement and a question. It seems like the image of what it means to be a liberated woman is very well demonstrated on television and movies, and it's very anti-child, anti-motherhood, anti-marriage. Where are our counterparts in the entertainment industry that will help us get out images of women that are actually true, and that motherhood, childhood, marriage don't destroy women, but are ways that she can be liberated? So do you have any counterparts in the entertainment industry that understand this truth?
We have Patricia Heaton.
Well, I'm just glad you brought that up, because I've been really praying about and thinking about that topic, because there's a priest, Father Brian Bransfield, who wrote a book called The Human Person, and he goes through the revolution. So there was an industrial revolution, sexual revolution, and it pointed us to where we are now. I would like to claim a cultural revolution, and let's have a cultural revolution where we can claim a culture of life. And what it starts with is really that kind of at the human anthropology of every single person is that we are made in the image and likeness of God. And we've forgotten. I think we've forgotten. I know I forget. I have to kind of look in the mirror and tell myself, but it's just like we have forgotten that we're made in God's image and likeness, that we're unrepeatable, irreplaceable. There's nobody else but us. It's like we're the only one of us, So
We unfortunately have to wrap things
I
up.
mentioned something that you guys brought out today, and that is the Daily Signal.
Mm.
You brought Planned Parenthood is not just about abortion; they're about sex education, and so they're going into the schools with sex education kits and stuff. And in your publication, the Daily Signal today, is Planned Parenthood is getting behind a recall effort of 3 conservative Republican school board members in Colorado, because they have some kind of sexual education differences with them, but it's important to note that they're going to get on the bandwagon politically and not just doing abortions and not just fighting against that. So that's a whole other avenue, and I appreciate your comments about the media, because that's a critical component as well.
Do you think that underscores Sister's point and the point of Gloria's question? I often tell people, although I think it's wonderful for people to raise their children to grow up at work at National Review or the Heritage Foundation, we actually need great storytellers in Hollywood and in writing and reminding us of who we are and where we come from and where we probably want to be going. So with that, we could be here for hours. I know a lot of us would love to solve all the problems here today with these wonderful women. But for now, thank you all for coming. Thank you, Molly. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Gracie. Thank you, Sister Magdalene. And thank you, everyone, for coming.